Kako izgleda priprema ceremonije otvaranja olimpijskih igara i koordinacija tima više od 1000 ljudi? O tome smo razgovarali sa Josh Stintonom, koji je učestvovao u realizaciji ceremonije otvaranja zimskih olimpijskih igara i paraolimpijskih igara. Josh, you worked with more than 1,000 people in open ceremonies at Olympics.
Yeah.
Tell me your experience. How was it, and what did you learn from that experience?
Oh my goodness, we could sit here all day with the things that I learned from that. A big takeaway from that experience is how incredibly human it was. You know, because when you're working with a large program like the Winter Olympic opening ceremony or the Winter Olympic closing ceremonies, it could be easy to assume that a lot of people are there for the same reasons. And unpacking that and realizing that from well over 1,000 people on the staff and volunteer side, there are so many different motivations, so many different drivers for people to be there, and trying to speak to those within the team as much as possible so that ultimately at the end of the day, even if it's the Olympic brand on the building or not, it's seeing people, you know, meeting people, and that.
When we talk about leadership, what was your biggest challenge?
Being aware of that constantly, because also we're human, so we're not going to get everything, you know, right in terms of our understanding as leaders that we need to be human first. And the challenge on that was, of course, it's a high-pressure environment. You know, we didn't have all day to sit around and talk about our motivations all the time. We had to put them into practice. And when you have a lot of moving parts happening, I mean, you can just imagine if you lifted the lid on the opening ceremonies, like all the teams running around, I mean, and everyone is so lovely, so professional, and that was a challenge, a welcome challenge. It was, I would say, more than a challenge, it was the opportunity, is to remember that in times of pressure, that taking a breath and stepping back and connecting from different lenses of motivation, because some people are there from a rational perspective because they wanted the resume experience. Some people are there because they love sport. Some people are there because they wanted to give back to the community, and they were Italian and they were very proud to be there for the Italian Winter Olympics. So it was just being able to remember, like, we're all here for a reason, and maybe your reason is different than mine, and that's okay. Yeah, and it's not to try to convince each other from something better, it's just why we're there.
And how do you build a trust? So many diverse teams. How do you build a trust with them, and how do you see that you did that? Did they trust you?
You see it in the shoulders, you know, you see it in behavior. You know, you see it in the way that we talk often about how to build culture and how to build environments in our teams. And you see it through people's behaviors, not behaviors you give them a survey about, which can be helpful at times, certainly, but just in their natural way. So when you see people feel comfortable enough to come up and say they need to borrow, like I mentioned before on stage, just saying like how to borrow a trait. Like right now, I'm not feeling that strong. I need to take a minute and kind of borrow some strength. And when you see people going to their leadership, which I'm happy to say that they did, being able to have that level of communication, it was just such a beautiful thing to see. Because again, the shoulders low, I feel seen, I feel safe, and knowing at the end of the day, and this was crucial, at the end of the day, that every single person that chose to give their time to creating the Olympic ceremonies, they were there as the Olympics. That person, that woman, man, that person is the Olympics. So it's not where does the Olympic begin? It's like everybody was there, was the spirit of it. And it wouldn't at all have happened, especially without it couldn't have happened without the volunteers and the team. So just seeing people like walk around with their shoulders low and their head high, even though it was maybe long days, and some of those days were quite rainy. You know, we were in February, and knowing like, I'm the Olympics. I'm the Winter Olympics. It's like, yeah.
And what could the company leaders learn from your experience when you tell them?
I would say there's two big takeaways. One, understand that your team's motivation might be different than yours, and they might be different from each other's. And please, leaders, that is okay. You know, that is okay, because celebrating why they're there. And of course, we all have our mission, we all have our values of what we're doing on an organization's purpose. But being able to celebrate the fact that people might have a different motivator, and that might be a bit more mechanical, like, I want this on my resume, but being able to humanize that and say, that's cool, but how do I support you in that? Because as soon as people feel like they're allowed to be human and heard, they're gonna fly. And that's when you see people creating experiences like, I'm very proud to say, like what they did with the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony in Milan and Verona this year. It's just absolutely beautiful. Oh, sorry, so there's two things. And then the other is empowering people to own it, to own their role. So and actually asking people that on a regular basis, what are you owning right now? Because even that language is an invitation to people to say, actually, this is not just what are you working on right now, like what's keeping you busy. That's a different level of language. What are you owning? And it's like, well, because then it's a reminder of when it's said, that is what we're owning. So we would ask each other that on a regular basis. What are we owning? What are we owning today?
And how is the leaderships changing as the global events are becoming bigger, different in some ways? You have different areas and you need to be in the same time.
You raise a very, very good point, because they are changing. And even, for example, like with the Winter Olympic opening ceremony, that was spread across different venues. So we had the big one in the San Siro in Milan, but there were other events that we would cut over to where then different international teams would then be on camera, but they'd be on camera in Livigno or out in the mountains. So not everyone was in the same place. So even the scope of this one was different than what we're kind of used to. And now more than ever, especially because of all AI and all these tools that are super helpful, now more than ever, it's so important to connect with the human-centered leadership. Really treating people as human, seeing them as human, supporting them in that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we all want to feel responsible. We want to feel proud of our work, and we want to feel seen. And I think leaders get that right. Regardless of what shape events will take in the future or what the projects are, always coming back to that, that's a good leader.
Can you tell us some tricks how to maybe some average performance team make high performance team? Do you have something to tell us?
There again, we could probably talk all day about it, because there's many case studies and many examples that I would love to share to unpack that. But quite pointedly, a really good one to go back to is the ownership. Really, like leaning back in and asking yourself, you don't have to ask yourself in front of your team. You can ask yourself this in your home with the lights kind of turned down and a reflection going, am I a leader that inspires people to own what they do? Because if you have that foundation, then it's going to be fine whatever evolution the organization changes, because then once people feel like they can own what they're working on, then that's when, again, you get that people feel like they've got a purpose, they've got a duty, they're responsible, and they care. So I think that's something that, I love saying it on stages, and I love just saying it all over the place, and that is really empowering our people to feel ownership around what they do, and then appreciate that their motivations are going to be different.
And for your job, what is the next step right now? For leadership, for companies, what do you see like it's your next step? The Olympic Games are like the biggest one, maybe?
It's definitely the biggest one so far. There's a number of things that I'm excited to have open conversations, like warm conversations around. Basically what I do and what I'm inspired from with what I've learned from the Olympics, and also other work that I do, is the induction program. So like when we hire new people and when we onboard new people, how do we bring them in to organizations in a way that they not only feel welcome and seen, but they feel a part of the process? Because I know, once we get that right, when we welcome people into our doors, that sets us up for such a foundation for future success. So that's a big part of my future focus, is the induction and alignment processes for organizations globally.
Thank you so much for talking to Bloomberg Asia.
Oh, thank you so much. Hvala.
Bio je to George Stinton, gost međunarodnog skupa Try Before You Buy Belgrade by Conventa, a za Bloomberg Adriju podelio je svoje iskustvo rada na jednom od najvećih globalnih događaja.